What brought them here?
Well, they're looking for farmland. They were Irish immigrant farmers, just trying to find their break out of the big city, and found a good community here in Colorado. At the time, it was developing, of course, but there was a lot of overlap between First Nation people traveling through, and the farmers that established this area, for the most part, were working hand in hand with all of these groups, and got to kind of witness the first generation of, well, maybe second generation for some people, of those gentrifying effects that take place when government agency steps in and annexes land from people and takes their farmland away, and you get to watch how communities really start to build, for better or worse. They have to build, and there's some ramifications to that. But for my end, I grew up in West Boulder, went to school in Boulder, graduated high school, and kind of skipped around and started the college tour. It really led me on a pathway of always interacting with a bunch of different people, and people from all different regions, from California, Mississippi, Minnesota, back to Colorado again, all different industries. And I think later good groundwork for me to work in a creative space environment, working with different people, coming in retail specifically after a little corporate stint. And working in the creative industry now for the last 12 years.
What you're doing with these hot boxes, why don't you explain a little bit of where you got your inspiration for this and how this all came about?
Yeah. Well, I've always been involved in the creative space, like I said. I helped now the governor's advisor on cannabis, Ian Sieb, help work on some of his first brand elements when Denver Relief opened. Subsequent probably dozen plus other dispensaries that I've helped with business development or brand development or retail or just building a booth or whatever. And so that kind of gave me a foot in the door to watch an industry really develop from the beginning. And with my, some corporate and some creative, but local resources, really got a chance to see what areas were missing in terms of the most sustainable substance that we have out there with the cannabis plant, and how it was being infiltrated by non-sustainable practices, and being injected into an environment that simply was going to cannibalize it, basically.
Right.
Like we watched, like I said, I'm from Boulder, so we watched this happen 10 years before with the natural foods movement. It is, basically run by packaging companies, essentially, in the frozen food market, probably. So those types of things, you kind of watch, you're sensitive to, having a background like me. So I saw an opportunity with social consumption, we'll get into, but specifically in how it could be a more sustainably built practice from a business standpoint. And through advisors on our team and through our advisor core and our operators in HTBX now, we really had a synergizing moment. One of my partners specifically was able to, fill in that last piece of the puzzle, with shipping containers being like the aha moment. And that's where the boxes really came into play. The business plan was really set around bringing in sustainability, but like when you find out that, out of 17 million containers around the world, 11 million are just sitting, that hits hard. And especially that they're just being built and built and built.
So they're built in China,
Yep.
primarily.
Yep.
I mean, is anybody making them here? Does it make sense to build shipping containers in the United States?
No.
So they're built in China.
Yep.
And they're shipped one time.
Yep. One time, and you'll see them bounce in between ports sometimes for a second trip. Beyond that, you're not going to see a lot of them. And to be honest with you, if they end up making too many voyages, you can still use them, but especially if they've been sitting in, southern regions,
yes.
right? They'll rust. And there's things you can do to them before that happens. And so you kind of really need to have...
Like refurbish them?
Mm-hmm.
I've seen available for sale, like one trip containers, and then like 2 trip containers, and then I think refurbished something trip containers, and then just the others.
And unfortunately, you're dealing with climate issues and you know, you
going
have different
across the sea.
going across the sea, you know, and even being into, you know, across the, you know, Mississippi Delta and like all that area, where you have a lot of big port cities. You also have a lot of like, you know, more economically diminished areas that can't do anything with them anyway. So you'll see more resources actually used with them down there. Out here, if you go down to southern Colorado, you're ever around Pueblo and Alamosa, that area, you'll see a lot of vans with shipping containers right next door. It's kind of like a perfect living environment, really.
Wow.
So, you know, you see so much of that, and then you're like, well, what else can we do with these, right? A colleague of mine likes to say, you know, they're just giant Legos, and they're more sustainable to institute as a footprint for what we want to build, even in density, in communities like Denver now, instead of having to use raw materials. We all know that 40% of construction is waste. Most of that's the raw materials they use to build the things. They're just the framework for the building.
Right. And these are steel, right? A steel blend, a red steel that's been pressure treated and painted and has big, heavy.
Yeah, like
These
the
are
trade
durable.
surplus or the trade deficit with China, like the shipping containers are a good unit of measurement for that, basically. If we were sending them more stuff in volume than they were sending us, then they'd have this big surplus. But is that correct?
Yes.
Interesting.
Well, I mean, it's a great assessment. You could look at a state like Colorado, which actually doesn't really export anything anymore. You don't see a lot besides, you know, oil and gas, maybe. You see those go down the train. But they've then occupied the train lines, which would be the most sustainable way of moving things. But that which is being exported, I mean, for the most part, it's, you know, oil, gas, and I guess services, right? Thankfully not, you know, munitions anymore. Yeah. Gotta go.
And not weed, officer.
Yeah, definitely
no,
not
we're
that.
not shipping any weed.
Nope, that's all staying in house now. So, yeah, there's a lot of opportunities to engage with more sustainable footprints, and I think that's where the onus is on people to recognize that, you know, all of these elevator shafts they're building that look like shipping containers could be shipping containers. But the cost margins that people look at is the same reason why we have a bunch of cans collecting this way and a bunch of them aren't going out the other way. So it's kind of an interesting point to, I think, a sort of a metaphor of our current status in developing cities right now. You know, after, you know, big floods, they could treat these things in a way that would be lifetime use. It would be a better footprint, a better foundation. You lock these things down. I don't know if you've ever seen these barges that are about to teeter over, and they're 15 boxes tall, and they're bent over like this. The boxes are sturdy. Kind of brings up a lot of stuff about how, you know, municipal regulations affects everything. So, yeah.
So the standard box size, what is that? Like, can you stand up in that?
Yeah. Well, you'll have a 20. Typically, it'll be 8 feet wide, fit on the back of a truck or train. But you'll have 20 footers, 40 footers, 53 footers, and you'll go up standard height, which would be the 8 feet. But you can get high cubes, which will go up 9.5. So those are the ones that we like to use.
The high cubes. Yeah,
we don't want to be discriminating against the tall people. Got to worry about those guys.
And you have to install stuff in them.
Oh man,
right.
All the things.
So, like, tell us some of the things that you can make with a shipping container.
Otherwise
I can't It blows my mind thinking about that. All of these shipping containers, they come here and they never go anywhere after that. Is somebody recycling them? Like, can you?
My company is, right?
I mean, but like grinding them up and turning them into steel that then we would ship by container across.
Yeah, you would think
China.
like one of those giant. You remember those can smashers? They need a giant can smasher that would melt it down and do something with it. I haven't heard anything like that going on. I imagine someone.
Wasteful.
Yeah.
So what can you do with them then?
Well,
it doesn't make sense to grind them up.
We try to block them together. We try to utilize those resources for things that we're using out. identify something out in society that we need. Why can't we use these to build bus shelters for people? Why can't we use these to build portable, showers or portable bathrooms, or set up staging using these rather than using, something like a bunch of wasteful pop-up tents. How many pop-up tents have I ever bought? Probably 100, and they're all trash, right? One wind gust, there goes $200, and it's going in the trash. Cans can really be more effectively used if people wanted to be more efficient about what they were doing. And I think that's just part of the little impasse that we're at right now. People are still sort of cognitively making decisions they know are not good for the environment that they're complaining about, but at the same time, they're not willing to make those little bit of extra steps. And the cans, you can use the cans for homes, you can use them for pools, you can use them for manufacturing facilities. You stack enough of them. We've seen a lot in the cannabis space with extraction facilities and shipping those around. So I've seen them as
mobile extraction lab.
And literally mobile. I've seen
hemp processing.
One that was sitting hemp processing where it actually sits, because we've got a time need era to process and cultivate almost immediately. And so you'll see these trucks with these big things that's got vacuums in them, and they're sifting up to the different levels of the resin that it's catching, and stalks go in the bottom. You can it up, it's airtight. Now you're safe. There's no love lost on a lot of areas. So it really makes for a good
our stream?
Good opportunity for
what happened?
How to resource these.
The screen just flashed. I just wanted to double check. Yesterday when the screen flashed like that, a few minutes later everything went blue. So,
but no,
we've lost it. But we're still recording.
Good.
So
excellent.
Yeah. We'll get the first bit down from Facebook. I'm just going to stop this.
What's going on?
We'll get the first bit done from Facebook, and then we'll get the second bit done from this, and this will be perfect. And I'll also try and start streaming again, but we'll see. No, that's why we went to YouTube.
Yeah.
I think they killed it.
Really? Interesting.
I think they killed it.
Because we're talking about how to grow cannabis.
I think they killed it because we were talking about how to do that. So now I'm super interested in that. We're only at 53%
They've only killed
CPU.
one other show.
And the recording is going fine, and we're going to put it on YouTube. But they killed it. They killed it. Facebook killed our stream again because we were talking about we're just talking about different things you can do with shipping containers.
That's what we were talking about with shipping containers.
And you said that they have these devices that sift stuff up and it goes through the top, and
that's when it's killed it, because we were explaining how it's done.
Huh.
When
that
the
is
last
so
time it happened,
weird.
the guy was explaining how to make FICO.
Yeah.
And how he had used it, and literally describing, boom, and the same thing happened.
Yeah.
And so
that's crazy.
we know we're watched because I share.
Well, the algorithms watch it.
Oh, well, the algorithm, yeah, they watch for what we, share. I'm sure we're on a, when I share the videos, I even get messages in Messenger that I'm violating community standards. So whatever bot that they have that's scanning the pages in looking for is checking that too.
Yes, the complications of all of this,
Just getting information out.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about.
Well, we're talking about something that someone can be self-sustainable instead of using products that are made from oil and gas. We're reusing. Probably going to get us talking about what we can do with hemp to set it up.
Yeah. Well, and for something that's, legal, nonetheless.
I saw on one of the, like a flip your house kind of show, they were discussing how they would take these storage containers, and I think it was like 4 of them, and there was 3 on the bottom, and then they had one, maybe two more on top. But it was a beautiful steel home, and they lived in an area where there was a lot of high winds. The way that they had secured it in the ground, because this is steel. I used to be part owner of a steel iron construction company.
Okay.
So we hung red iron a lot.
Yeah.
And the amount of steel that goes into the ground that is bolted to those steel beams.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you can just put the steel beams up and put these containers in between, and that's plenty of stability.
Well, and, you know, I think it's interesting because if the existing enterprises and the existing infrastructure were to just make a philosophical view it in a different perspective, they don't have to do it immediately, you know, and just like try it. They don't have to feel like something is about to overtake them. They can embrace it. There's nothing saying that they can't make just as much money and run as big of an enterprise as they already do. There's no love lost in this. Most people don't want to go run international conglomerates, right?
Right.
They want to have their lives and do things. But they can use more sustainable methods that are ultimately just hurting all of us if we don't do it. So, yeah, very fundamentally, I don't understand how there can be so much pushback around it, but maybe I'm just too simple to think about. I don't know. Yeah.
You would think not, because this makes so much sense, you know. Just supplies wise, and I know what goes into getting ready to build a steel frame building and having it all almost pre-made for you. And what you choose to put in it, you can make it as green as you want to be with the insulation and however you do it. You don't have to turn it necessarily into a chemical box. And I think that's what I was reading, the pros and cons of this. Somebody had done one, filled it full of formaldehyde and a lot of toxic type materials to redo it, and then it wasn't such a cool thing anymore. You know, so it depends on what you use it for and how you use it.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, you can get a electric vehicle and fill it with a bunch of toxic people and go cause a lot of harm. I mean, the identity of sustainability being like a singular event is sort of lost on me, you know, because I've seen these patterns of, you know, the whole foods movement, you know, the natural foods idea.
That really happened in Colorado, though. That was the big push.
Yeah, and we were supportive of it collectively as a community, to like empower and embolden people to do this thing, and then not understanding that there are forces that are at play out there that are sometimes, you know, threatened or not understanding. I think there's a lack of communication sometimes. You know, in my own enterprises, some of the best things I've done is like go directly to the person that you think is going to be the most upset about what you're going to do. It's sort of like my telltale that I'm about to do something is I'm going to go and meet with someone and they're going to be like, but I'm going to be your competitor. And this is like, yeah, but we got to figure out how this is going to work, because ultimately you're not going anywhere and I'm not going anywhere. Right. And I think that, you know, more could be said for that, but I don't know. It doesn't always happen.
Could you use shipping containers to do, like we were talking about Elon Musk earlier? Could you use shipping containers as some way to get to the airport faster by lining up just oodles of them? And,
well, I've always thought about like
coat it with concrete or something, so you've got like a tunnel above, or just dig a tunnel. And
could be. I mean, you could certainly build up enough of them and reuse them in that capacity, like for that. You know, I don't know what the parameters are around. I'm no physicist, but the way that might work or might not work. Think about, though, like simple things, like you're driving down the freeway and they spend so much time and money building these walls. Why can't we use cans? Like even in sections, like it'd be cool. Like you could do like a little art thing with that.
They don't have to look like a can. I think that's the problem, is you're trying to talk about a concept to some people who can't let their own minds see something other than an old rusty can.
Yeah, or you put a face on it and make it look like anything. Mm-hmm. You know, put the same siding on it if it's the same beige siding that you want, you can still do that.
Right.
Yeah. And they're incredibly spacious. You know, 2 of those, I mean, you could fit probably 20 people in 2 of them. I mean, comfortably.
Side by side?
Side by side, up, down, whatever. I mean, it's really quite a thing. And when you get to even just tying these things down, it's like they're not going anywhere, you know? And so I look at it a lot from like what things are happening out in the world that like people are hurting and like needing to have temporary shelters for, and, you know, these other types of solutions, which, you know, it's a lot going on in that space. So.
And you can transport them intermodally. You could have you could outfit your whole rock band. Do they do that? Do rock bands have their own shipping containers that they can?
I haven't seen that yet. I think it'd be a great like band studio space. If somebody wants to steal that, they can. I mean, that's a great
band
idea.
studio space.
Yeah. Get a bunch of cans and then outline them, and, you know, some AC units, and like you're cranking. You could actually do.
Soundproof 'em.
Yeah. Why not? Yeah, you do the whole thing.
Well, if you can, one of the things you were talking about is turning it into a lab.
Yeah.
And being able to seal it off. People don't realize all of the different steps it takes to have a good, clean lab.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that, you know, that's part of the things that we like to help be like the creative process, and like how people can open their minds up to all of the transformative experiences that will help them with what they're doing. You know, typically speaking, I mean, I know there's good ideas out there, but typically speaking, there's a lot of people. If you've got a problem you need to solve, there's probably other people who have this problem. Mm-hmm. You know, we were talking about, you know, folks in the cannabis space that have, you know, extraction needs. Well, that's a known thing. You know, we don't need to have, we all can't afford $1.5 million thing, but we can share in using that $1.5 million thing, right?
Yeah.
And that's important. You know, I mean, that's a community, you know, socially driven enterprise based on need.
When I look at the hemp harvest this year, what's going to happen in like Kansas, when they go out to do it, they're like 20 years behind or more than that, what they can do with wheat, because a lot of the wheat farmers, which are the same farmers, they don't have a wheat combine that comes through, or
right.
a wheat harvester,
right?
And just these traveling crews of people come through with like 18 of these things loaded up on semis, and
right.
they just follow the harvest north, and they need that for hemp. They need people with like big drying apparatuses somehow in these containers where, you know, you just start cutting the hemp, and these, you know,
you're right. They
teams
have it
of people
for
to do the mobile harvesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and there's a lot of
extraction.
There's a lot of transfer in the skill sets and the talents and services that are already in operation today. As we're seeing, you know, non-sustainable resources continue to dive in use. Those folks that, you know, might feel like they're having their jobs stolen by, you know, natural resource development can easily jump over and apply those same pipeline type of ideation to the cannabis space. They're very transferable. I mean, you have these oil fields that they transfer entire cities of people, area to area to area. They use cans, right? They can do that same thing and do hemp processing that way. Yeah.
You could put it on train cars if you got a big enough operation.
Yep. Yeah. Get
Sounds
yourself
like
a
a
train.
winner.
Yeah. Just get a train. Throw it all on there.
Yeah.
That'd be a blast.
Yeah.
Who's the conductor? Right? Yeah. Who's got shotgun on that one?
Yeah.
Just funny.
Riding
wanna
the
blow the
cannabis
horn.
train.
Yeah.
We'll have all these stoners out there waving at us as we go by.
Yeah. You just have to decide if you're going forwards or backwards. That's it.
I wonder if we could. Do you know anything about the regulations regarding about like what you can paint on the side of a container?
I know a few things about the regulations about what you can paint on the side of a container.
Could I put a giant Veedverks logo on the side of a container and just ship it?
Well, it depends on whose permission you asked. I know plenty of street artists that I'm sure would be happy to do that. You'd probably be more challenged to do that for the restrictions that the railway companies put on those things.
But if I want to ship a container myself,
Mm-hmm.
or if I know somebody who already needs to ship a container, could I sponsor a shipping container?
It would be a good profile to think of, to have, but to get on a train, it's a lot of boxes. You have to commit to 20, 50. Like
Really?
Minimum. I mean, generally it gets 100 plus. You gotta see a lot of those industries, like the viable pathways are there. They've just, the rest of us have been priced out of it. So, and that's no nonsense. People know that that's just economies of scale. I'm like, well, if you can afford to do that, that's what you do. So, ironically, the sustainable box would end up on the back of a truck and would probably get driven somewhere. Yeah.
Should be more cost effective that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need to hook up with somebody that needs to ship 20 boxes and then slap a logo on that box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You hear me, NASCAR? Run out of
If
patience.
these guys are really enterprising, they'd be doing that, right?
Well, I would think, okay, so you turn it into a consumption room.
Yep.
And you pull it up to an event, you would think that a business, a dispensary, would like to be the sponsor and slap their label out on the front and have that real estate for advertising.
Well, yeah, we're very sensitive to the regulatory environments. Colorado has a very different marketing and advertising rule set than California does. Mm-hmm. You can go to California and you'll see all those privacy screens that are around construction sites here in Denver that are just black, which you can't put anything on, especially if it's related to the industry. In LA, it's like miles of just ads, and people are doing these very same things. So it depends on the regulatory environment. Here in Colorado, we have a explicit no public knowledge, no public awareness that cannabis is actually here. Right? No one
Isn't that ridiculous?
We just passed $1.5 billion so far this year, and
we're not talking about it.
We can't talk about it. The money comes in, but we can't talk about where it goes. So there's a lot of spoils and things being spoiled in this process, and one of them is, unfortunately, some great brands, some really innovative companies, some folks that are really trying to reach out and be very strong supporters of the community simply cannot. And so it requires us to take steps, and part of the step is we'll follow the rules because that's what we got to do. And we'll do advertising that's allowable. So inside the space, which allows for a much more immersive opportunity, so we'll go and get the appropriate license and place the unit for the time that we're allowed and show these folks, that we're here, we mean business, and, we're going to do good business. Yeah.
Now, you were part of the push with Denver for consumption space and that, what have you. Mm-hmm. How do you feel like that's changed last year compared to years prior? Has that opened more doors for you? You more optimistic?
Well, I think anytime you really immerse yourself into a community, and especially a community that is a small percentage that are really the innovators and the leaders and the cheerleaders to getting these things to go forward, it requires you to engage on a personal level, and it becomes the thing that you do. And so I definitely have seen a lot of shifts. I wouldn't say necessarily more doors opening, but a remembrance of the people that I've worked with in the past, the things that I have, personally been able to do and helped others to do just by being a connector or being a resource for folks. And because I haven't been so hardcore, activist, I've been a cheerleader on the side, and I've been active in helping to develop other people's brands. But for myself, I think because I wasn't so directly involved in those conversations for the last, probably 5 years prior.
Right.
it gave me some objectivity to see things in a different light and apply what I'd been dealing with, which was, we could make, consumption legal across the whole country, and you're still going to have to deal with all your regulatory agencies. You're still going to have to deal with your fire departments and your zoning and all of this.
Until we get these things changed.
That, and also, we got to be respectful of the fact that this is a 100-plus-year-old prohibited thing. Yes. And we can't expect people to, flip on a dime. They all have been programmed and drinking the juice for a long time, almost literally.
Right.
And that takes time to pull your brain out of that. I always like to use the example of, everyone's against cannabis until they find their,
realize that topicals are amazing.
Yeah, or you're in a stage 4 situation in life, and literally the only thing you can do besides making yourself sicker is make yourself better.
Right.
And I've heard that story I don't know how many times.
Yep.
Now, this is not endorsed by the FDA, so I'm just saying these things
I'll tell you this. We're all going to die of something. If something doesn't kill you first, you're going to get cancer. And when you get cancer, your mind changes. You've got Google.
Yeah.
And you would think so.
That's why we're seeing, the people just since we did the monster truck, I remember we've gone up 30 percentage points in number of Americans in favor of just recreationally legalizing cannabis for adults 21 and over. It's there's been a huge sea change, and I think a lot of it is the older population because they're getting sick, and when grandma gets sick, the odds of their grandkid not saying, "Hey, have you looked into cannabis?" at this point seems pretty remote.
Yep. Right. Well, and it's sort of interesting that it's clashed at the exact same time as this very severe and well announced opioid issue.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so people are like, "Well, I don't want to take pills," and there's this kind of push. I can't tell you how many doctors, not on the record, but they will tell me straight up, I volunteer at this clinic over here, and I tell people go and do this. Get something green, you know what I mean? And so it's a big piece, and it's important. I think it's important to start communicating about these things, because you don't have this when people are like, "Oh, I'm on this pill," and they're talking about it, right?
Right.
It's not like a thing. It's kind of like you get this prescription and you take it, and no one knows,
right?
This thing, and the plant's just different, And it's not that the people are different. People are the community. But I think the plan is that it imbibes sharing, which might scare a lot of capitalists, but we can still make money doing this. It's a thing.
There's a lot of uncertainty, and when you get a cancer diagnosis, if you don't follow the protocol, you get registered letters. There's a lot of pressure that's put on a cancer patient to do the chemotherapy, and they're being told, "Oh, there's no science behind it. Nobody's done any studies." And we're here to tell you, go to PubMed. Come out here and see some of the doctors. There's nurse hotlines that can talk about cannabis and help guide you through. There's wonderful books that's been written. There's plenty of science to get you started.
That nurse hotline you just mentioned was a great one. I remember that company popping up a couple weeks ago.
Right. And then there's another one that's about to launch in January. That's a cannabis nurse hotline. And then we have our fabulous Marcy Marr, shout out, love, always. Phenomenal with the Cannabis Nurses Association and how she goes to different states and teaches nurses. So there is a lot of research, and not to be afraid to reach out and to think of other alternative solutions.
For me, it's always there's been an inherent distrust of the medical system. Just personally, because I personally have a story around that, and having been prescribed something that ultimately made me very sick, and realizing well, I'm not doing this anymore. And part of like what I've been trying to cultivate in the environment with this new entity that we're standing up is creating an environment to bring people together and allow them to share that experience in a way that like we are used to sharing it. You know, it's a sharing plant, yeah, but creating an environment that we're not being charged to go into, and like we don't have, you know, this a whole other thing where we're being treated like, you know, we're doing something wrong. And allow the community and the industry and, you know, to interact together. And that's very important to me. Yeah.
So where all could you put these things?
The hotbox units can go wherever you've got
like
about
in Denver, where could?
Well, according to current regulations, which hopefully I can edit this later and expand that.
Yeah.
Out of the 64 square miles of City of Denver property, we have about 5 square miles that we can place designated consumption area licenses. That can be for either temporary or permanent application. So, you know, part of what we've done over the last few years is identify exactly where we can do that. Of course, the rules have been shifting. That might shift again in January with this hospitality bill, but I doubt it. I think it'll stay the same, at least for another 4 years or so. But I think we will see an ability for these cans to be dropped down and the hotbox, whatever entity might be procuring these to use them, right? Company X, we'll just say hotbox for now. You have an odd parcel of land that you want to activate in some way. We're all talking about density, right? So even in the city's voices, we got to come together. We got to start using those little weird roundabout areas and those weird slot areas to like drop something in there. And the can is perfect for this. Temporary wise, if you have a special event, you can just drop it down in the parking lot. Let us know you have your license. We'll go and drop it off for you.
Put it on top of a roof.
You can put it on a roof. We can put it up there for sure. You could stack it and do something crazy. A lot of dispensaries who are within the setback rules. We see a great tasting room, tack-on option. Grow houses that want to do a tour like a winery. Plant these boxes down and like you go to the winery, you check out the plants. You know, very similar conversation there. And then you want to try. You know, you want to taste it. You want to try the good stuff.
What about just an airlock for going into a clean facility? Like you've got all the gear, like just the decontamination room.
Yep. There's some applications, active conversations we're having with some companies right now about doing similar type of things.
That would be fabulous for like a hazmat, a portable hazmat type of thing.
I think the way that, you know, the plant needs to be cleaned and processed, and there has to be stages in that are, as we're going to see, increasingly more regulation around to ensure that, you know, this perp tastes like this perp and does this perp thing, just like this one does on different sides of the country. Once that's proven, I think we'll start seeing a lot more things open up.
Did I see this for real or did I make it up? Is somebody building like a multi-unit house type of like apartment building out of shipping containers? Or did I see like a meme that was like, shouldn't you do this?
Yeah, there's a lot of talk around that. There are some areas around the world, and you know, you have to understand that like we live in a bubble in the States. You go to Europe and these things are everywhere. They have cheaper, more technically sound, you know, labor force, and plenty of cans to go around. They know better to like put that thing to waste because they don't have as much room.
Yeah.
Right. So they can't be like throw the can in the back of the truck, which is kind of what we're doing here, literally.
Yeah.
And we want to take those cans and like do something with them, right? So you can really do anything. And you know, I think part of the interesting thing about developing a business here around a specific type of vertical or industry is that that's just one thing that we can help, you know, lease or license or sell those things for. We're very much open to getting in the room. And like I come from a creative background. It's like, that's the fun part.
Yeah.
You know, that part we're not charging for, you know, we're like, we want to make sure that this solution gets out there, and doesn't get stopped and like put in the closet like your shoe boxes. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, you think about as an entry point, because they are so cheap, they become a cheap way for, I mean, it's a natural resourced equitable entry point. So if someone wants to start a business and wants to have it look a certain way or place a certain way, that's kind of where we help start dividing and building, new solutions with those people's businesses in mind. Yeah.
Right. Well, they have something new, something uniquely theirs, at a fraction of the cost of a, full-blown new construction of something. So.
Well, and you've been in the, the metal business, steel business before. We all know that when you start putting all the bells and whistles on things, it's going to be a little cheaper, but I will tell you one thing, it will be faster. And when you live in a time and money environment that you can get this thing delivered to your door in 12 weeks instead of 12 months, we have factory licensure around these things. So once that model is set, gets inspected and out it goes, and, it's a lighter footprint. I think it starts bringing more community together in a different way. Yeah.
How many storage containers are at Burning Man, do you think? Right? Everything that you just described you could do with those, I thought, boy.
Shouldn't they be everywhere?
Everywhere.
I mean, that was a big push from last year.
Toilets.
The result of last year was that this is too wasteful. We saw there were like 60,000 bikes that were left or something.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
And I don't know who got those. They're just out there.
What?
I heard about this. It was like a big thing.
That they left there?
There was a big deal about this, the bikes specifically, which I thought was interesting.
Everything I knew about Burning Man, which is very little, has been shattered.
Sorry. I'm sure someone went and picked it up. Peace to the Burning Man people, the burners. I know you guys are having a great week this week. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I have no desire to do that. I wish I did.
Oh, I definitely want to do it.
I want
to do it with something big that we might be able to make out of shipping containers.
There you go. Well, I've been in the trailer of I have a friend of mine that goes every year, and the dust, and he said that dust just kills anything electronic, anything with wiring. You have to completely redo it.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a little respite.
Yes.
Yeah, sand respite.
In your face, and everything is just dry from being
There's
in that
nothing.
lake bed. Nothing.
That sounds great. Just to do
Maybe
that
for a week.
For a week. Yeah. I haven't done it.
People go on like mud retreats, right? Mm-hmm. This is like a sand retreat.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you could build a whole. One of the things that we're trying to work through a lot of our entertainment partners and potential partners is these mega festivals that are traveling around, kind of like the Burning Man thing.
Arise.
Yeah, Arise. We'd love to speak with them. Actually, I know a couple of programmers over there, but getting these things so that like there's a template. A lot of these houses are owned by the same music production studio or something, and so like to have a bunch of custom-made booths for a better experience.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah,
where you can actually try the product and like you can be in the space and like instead of tent.
Are you? They have those.
Yeah.
That'd be fantastic. In fact, when we were at Arise with Boulder Vapor House, where we had our stuff in their tent, and I hung out there for the weekend, and there was a big thunderstorm that moved through and just wrecked a ton of tents. In fact, Open Vape had a tent there, and just got destroyed. And shipping container wouldn't have been a problem at all. Would have been a place to be.
Hurricane 5 tested on those things. They're not going anywhere, right?
Where do you store it when you're not using it? Like if I wanted to do something like that, just totally go rock the. Let's say I wanted to go to every single NASCAR race and set up a.
It'd be a great setup, right? So many people.
So, but in the meantime, in the off season, can you just store it somewhere?
Yeah, sure. Well, it could turn into more of like a. I mean, you could, if it's super custom, I mean, that's yours, and you can just store it where you store it, and you guys can stick it right out back. Nobody says anything unless it's for certain use, right? You see cans laying around everywhere. I'm like, as soon as you walk into it and tell the city you're going to be in there, that's when there's like,
They have some major concerns.
Sure, but if you're like, we look at it like as like a lease opportunity, and people are like, I don't have this much money for a custom thing to do that, but like maybe I want to make it look like mine for the weekend. That could be a thing. In the consumption space, so many of the rules are locally driven in a regulatory way that, we have to be very mindful to, understand the balance that has to be there and respect, that if we want to do this in a different way, we started 3 years ago working with the city directly and said they were beside themselves, right? They were like, what do you mean? I'm like, I want to make a box where people can smoke. And they're like, you're crazy. Like, first of all, why'd you come to us? We're the city. And I'm like, that's why I'm coming to you, right? So it was like stepping outside of that realm of like, I'm going to do something until I get caught. Right, which is kind of like what we've been raised around. The actual hotboxing when I was a kid, right? Windows up, outside on the down low kind of thing. And in order to like shift that, we've got to give a space that's like safe and compliant, accessible for people, and it's got to be free. Like, if they want to see people cut back on drinking, they'll start charging at the door at every bar. Right. They're not that concerned about it, apparently. Yeah. So, and it's not a big deal to like, drink with the rest of them. But you have a cannabis experience, you have to do the same thing. Otherwise, we're not the same. And especially don't tell me that like I have to go somewhere and like pay and then I just have to stay there.
Right.
Like, I'm terrified at that point, right?
Yeah.
I'm already nervous about it. You know what I mean? Yeah. I like to go for walks and stuff, like, get out.
Tomorrow is the final Friday of 2019.
It is, peace, correct? Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
Man. Well, you're a musician.
I'm a hack.
You're a hack. Wow. Better than a hack than not a hack.
Yeah.
No, thanks for that. Final Friday Denver is a concept that was started about 8 years ago. And it was just kind of this perfect thing where local musicians that I knew in Circle, they'd be playing at maybe like Larimer Lounge or like, down at Metal Lark Bar or something like this. And they would like come to me at the end of the month. Like all artists, we were all, in a way, needed something. It's either the 1st or the 15th kind of deal, right? They're like, well, I'm like, I don't have any money for you, but we could put on a show. And so I'd like have some of these guys start playing in the shop, Megafauna back then. And eventually another band would show up and I'm like, well, go talk to my neighbor and see if they'll let you do it. And at the time, flowbots.org was my neighbor. So now Youth on Record. So like, peace to that crew. And then it was the next one, and then it was the next one, and eventually over a couple of years, we actually grew it to it was like 25 block long party. Alleys, loading docks, inside places, and all without shutting off a street, which the city loved. They were like, thank you. We can keep services going, right? And it really, it was amazing. It was kind of had that 6th Street vibe before it went crazy and people didn't know what was going on. And so it's grown, and then it reached a certain point that like, the festival thing started happening. And I don't have anything against festivals, but I just don't go to a lot of them because it's a lot of same. And when you get a lot of same, you get a lot of same people. And when you get a lot of same people, you lose individuality. So we started dialing it back down. We've been a block party since then. We're activating always within local businesses. And it's about bringing money to the local community. And doing so, without having to have a huge financial footprint. And so it's, you come in, you get a wristband, and like you'll get like 20 deals at the local breweries and local restaurants and, whatever. Super fun to get engaged into. And we contribute to 2 major organizations this past year. I'm really happy to hand those checks over. Nice. Dream Culture USA, they're a local nonprofit that helps develop legacy programs for kids of all ages up to 18. Take them camping, take them outdoors, take them in the creative spaces, find out what they want to do and like build entrepreneurial activities around it for them so that they build their own business. And Water for People is based here in Denver. They are the world's largest water donation program. They go into communities that have no access to clean water and work with the locals in those markets, build the pipelines to clean water. And I think so far they've helped bring like over 5 million people clean water.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So got to keep the local global scale going. And we do it with a quick $5 donation wristband. So that's it. FinalFridayDenver.com.
FinalFridayDenver.com.
Yeah. Peace.
And it's tomorrow.
It'll be down at 14er Brewing.
14er Brewing.
Yeah, these guys are just getting started. 2 high school buddies that started brewing beer in their mom's basement kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's just fun to watch, like, youthful enterprise, like, with youthful enterprise it can go, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And
We brought up the website, but I don't think we ever talked about it.
Oh, yeah.
About the different things on it.
Yeah, you're looking at a bunch of different versions of the Hotbox renderings, the HTBX renderings. Really expressing, you know, all the different places they can be set. In different components and areas that we're looking at jumping into from
there was a cruise ship right oh, you would park it right off of
right
that's
there.
Genius.
Yeah, we've got a
Park it right where a cruise ship's gonna pull in.
One of our partners is up in Alaska, up in Anchorage, and in the southeast, you know, they get as many tourists in the summer as the Hoover Dam does all year. And so you're talking about people getting off a boat. It's legal to buy, you know, it's legal to grow, it's legal to buy, but it's
not legal to smoke.
It's illegal to consume. And so we've developed a space that hopefully we will be looking at a pilot program in the southeast down in Juneau, Sitka area. It's an Alaska family through and through. 2 of our operators in the company are Alaskans, so we keep the Final Frontier spirit in our minds.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But these are super fun, and the landing page kind of gives a great little like dive into, you know, what the thing. We talk to people about cans, and people think they know, and then, you know, I think pictures just help. Yeah, we're really excited to bring
this.
Bring a real life experience and help
To make it ADA accessible.
Yep. For the first time ever in about a week. We'll be looking at the first time people can walk in off the street. They're 21 and up. BYOC, you know, consume legally, and be about their business. Go enjoy the big art festival that's happening next week. It's the Crush Art Festival. It's a big street art activation that happens.
Where's that?
It's in the Rhino Art District.
Okay.
And it's an affiliate of that organization. It's been going for 10 years now, and really great activation for local and international artists. But super fun to be sitting and seeing ourselves in it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, this is really cool.
That is.
I admire all the 3D stuff that you've got going on.
Well, we got some good designers on team. I'm about as ignorant as they come when it comes to that stuff.
All
I
right.
just know how I want it to look.
Right.
It's a thing.
I do that. We're so blessed that one of the owners who does amazing artwork, and he did all the packaging and stuff like that. Because I have an idea in my mind, but getting it onto the webpage is completely different.
It's got to start there. I think a lot of folks that are designers would say that.
Yes, and it does.
yeah.
I completely agree.
Someone's got to draw on the napkin first.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
100%.
That's funny. I can't tell you how many ideas and songs or story ideas or whatever that I've written on a bag or a napkin or something somewhere. And now that I'm moving, I came across a story idea for something that was written on the back of a grocery list.
Yeah.
So you just
Well, that's
when inspiration hits. It
and
hits.
bring, all inspiration is welcome. You know what I mean? I think that's part of the thing around, recognizing that things are creative. In all areas, they can be creative. And it's not just like a thing we go and do.
Right.
Like, I'm gonna go be creative now.
Right.
That's fine. You're gonna go paint. Like, you're gonna play. You're gonna hack away at something. Like, that's cool. that's part of the whole thing because it gives balance to a lot of stuff that we're doing.
Well, the creative mind works hand in hand with your executive mind. Because if you can't be creative and think outside of the box, how are you going to organize and be executive in your work and make these decisions?
For me, it's really helped me be more intentional with my... there was always, I think, this misnomer that like things are separated. Like they're not separated. Things
Nothing
are
is.
together. Yeah. And it's more of a universal thing, but I think that it helps me be more intentional in finding creative. Sometimes I've been accused of being too creative about things.
Oh, me too.
Right. So like bring it, like come back down off of your hot air balloon. But I'd rather be in that way. You know what I mean? Like, you know, there's a lot of puns around the out of the box thing and
Right.
the fact that we're making something in a box, but I think it's important to like keep that string attached is important, you know, but sometimes not. Sometimes you gotta let it go.
Well, you're such an out-of-a-box thinker. You never had a box, and now you have boxes.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Big Legos.
Big Legos.
Legos.
Yeah.
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 So,
Well, thank you so much for coming to spend some time with us today.
I really appreciate it. Love the facility and the hospitality. You guys are wonderful, and I'm looking forward to working together possibly and kind
Figure
of
something
creating some things.
Yeah, make some stuff.
Let's make some stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Julie, for setting
You're
this
so
up. As
welcome.
always, thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And as always, I'm Travis Lippert, reminding you, if you don't get hemp here, get hemp somewhere.
another hour just flew by.
How about that?
I can't tell you how many of our guests